How's it going, everybody? This is Ron Sparkman, and I am the Chief Curiosity Correspondent for the Space Foundation Discovery Center. Sorry that we're a little bit late, everybody. Today we had some technical difficulties, and it's always going to happen when you have two people that stream as often as Dustin and I do. There should absolutely be no issues whatsoever, but sometimes those things happen. So we're very glad to have everybody on the show today and watching here with us as we welcome our good friend Dustin Gibson, who is the CEO of OPT Telescope. I should have remembered that, as well as the co-host for the Space Junk podcast. So, Dustin, welcome on the show today, man. So glad to have you.
No, thank you. Thank you. This is fun. We've been doing a lot of this stuff together recently, all kinds of streams. We're everywhere together.
All over the place, man, all over the place. And I'm really excited to have you on today because you've just got so much happening. And before we dive into the really deep stuff, let's talk a little bit about the thing I think that might matter most. Where did you find your passion, love, and the obsession for space and science that you have?
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy story. I know I've dug into it on the podcast quite a bit, so apologies for anyone that's already heard it there. But I actually didn't buy my first telescope for myself. I wasn't really interested in all of this. I know that's not really the story that you typically hear, from people in the industry. It's like, oh, I loved this from the time I was a kid, and I came up, and I knew I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I got telescopes and all this stuff. I really didn't think, if you asked me, 7, 8 years ago, certainly 10 years ago, if you'd asked me, hey, will you be into space at all? I'd be like, no, I'll probably watch a documentary from time to time. I'm into it like that, but it won't be my career. But I bought a telescope for my.
Looks like we lost Dustin there for a little bit. Those technical difficulties continue, huh? Hopefully he'll come back here in just a second. All he was doing really was introducing himself, and so just so everybody knows, he may have returned. So
we're in lots of issues today, man.
It's the issue day, man. But that's at least we can laugh about it. This is something a streamer can just you get used to it. It happens from time to time. So
it does, man. It does, especially right now with the whole world at home. Everybody's on internet. When I talked to my internet provider when Twitch was crashing, they were like, "Listen, we weren't pandemic proofed." And it's like, okay, like that's fair. Everybody in the world is at home online right now. I get it.
Yeah.
But this stuff happens. So anyway, like I was saying, the first telescope I bought was actually for Jenny, my business partner, as an inspiration for her paintings. But my thought was that I probably won't do much with this. I might look through it, a couple times, see the moon, see the planets, and then I'll be done with it. But the exact opposite happened. I mean, I looked through, finally figured out what the focus knob was because I'd never used a telescope. And I don't know if you know this or not, but growing up in Alabama, space science wasn't high on the list unless you're, in Huntsville. Everywhere else, I mean, I never had a telescope in school. I saw one, so I didn't know what a focus knob was, So I finally got this thing to pop into focus, and my mind was just completely blown. Jenny, the same way. I saw the moon, and I saw it up close for the first time ever, high magnification through a Dobsonian, and we were just hooked, man. It's all it took. It was like a perspective shift that nothing else in the human experience can give you, right? There's no philosophy book you can read, or you're not going to turn a page somewhere and be like, oh, everything I thought I understood about my place just changed the way it does looking through a telescope for the first time.
And what a great story to kick it off. And yeah, so from there, the passion continued, and you and Jenny ended up working for OPT for a little bit, and then that led to something much bigger, right?
Oh yeah, so it's not enough then to just say, hey man, one thing led to another, and now we own OPT. That doesn't cover all the bases. Thought that's how these stories go.
I don't think so. I'm not sure if that's going to be enough. We got to get the meat of the story.
Yeah. So we were in the fitness industry. We were in the fitness industry. You and I have talked at length about this, and so I'm sure a lot of your followers already know at least parts of your story. But sometimes you're doing something, you go down a life path that you thought for sure you want, and you're very invested in it. You've put a lot of time, energy, resources, everything into it, and you only to get there and realize this isn't the level of fulfillment that I thought that would be there. And that's where I was. It wasn't, I was looking for something that I felt like, wow, I connect with this. This is developing purpose in identity instead of just career, And so space and, especially just telescopes in this industry, it felt like that. And so Ginny and I both kind of noticed that. We came to OPT to work as entry-level employees, not with the intention to buy the company, but just because we wanted to learn. And it can be a very challenging thing to learn if you don't have people around you that know, and if you don't have, information you can trust. And what I was finding on a lot of the forums was that you can get really great information there and you can get really terrible information there. And mistakes in astronomy can be expensive. So I wanted to talk to the pros, and everything I searched just kept leading me back to this company that was already the largest in the country at the time. And so I finally I went to Jenny and it's like, we got to go out there. Let's be around these people and let's learn everything we can about telescopes and astrophotography and just push ourselves. So that's exactly what we did. We just went to work for the company as entry-level employees, and we did that for about a year, just working alongside everybody. And it was only then that we kind of fell in love with the company. Craig, he had owned the company at that point for 42 years, and he came to me and he said, hey, like this company, these people, like this is my baby. I've invested my life here, and I want this thing to go to the next level. And he knew that it had to go online. It had to serve the global community in a bigger way than it was. And it had to be streamlined toward that effort if we were ever going to show more people space and make it more accessible. And, it was a kind of a shock to us that that was a direction that was possible. And so we said no for like 6 months. And finally, Jenny and I both just kind of looked at each other and it's like, this is the dream. Like, this is going to be a lot of work. This is going to be, the biggest challenge of our lives. But if we pull this off, we can show more people space than has ever been done by a company. We can make it accessible for people, like with the observatory project and the things we're doing now. And that dream just made it worth it, man. We dove all in, and we've owned the company now for 3 years.
And that's a great thing to touch on too, is that you all have a really incredible initiative to basically give the control of remote telescopes to people all over the world, and the goal is eventually to be all over the world. So tell us a little bit about how that came to be, and what the inspiration for this huge project, this massive undertaking was.
You do these things sometimes where you think you're going to help other people, and instead it ends up, helping you more than you ever could have helped the other person. For instance, like I just did a project with a 12-year-old named William on Twitch. Everybody watched this unfold. And the whole idea was he just moved to Georgia, and I kind of felt the pain because I myself had moved to Alabama right on the other side of the line. And, he was in school, but this kid has a passion for space and really wanted to push himself. But didn't have access to the tools to do it. And so through several different people, my dad finally called me. He's like, hey, I met someone whose kid wants to get into this. And so I was just like, let's open the observatories to William. Let's have him shoot my next photo with me. And let's just see what happens, because it could just be, hey, we had an exciting couple weeks together. You got a space image of your own to talk about with your friends now. Or it could be, we just made an astrophysicist. We just helped somebody we empowered somebody to really pursue this passion that they had. And this kid is so amazing. I mean, his photo is incredible, probably the best one on my Instagram account. But I think that it's those little moments that you have where you realize, like, the more we make space accessible, the work you're doing included, Ron, I think the more we make it accessible, the more we inject positivity and positive change into, the place we have to live. I don't think you can look at the perspective, the universal perspective, and hold on to the negativity of the smaller things we deal with day to day. I think it's hard to reconcile those two things, and space wins. Right. So it's a very unifying approach globally. And I think that's why we started these initiatives, is to say, what if we build these observatories? And if we can make it happen, and instead of charging anybody, we find a way to just give it away for free. For the first time ever, people can explore their own neighborhood without having to rely on the agencies or on universities or anyone to tell them what's out there. It's like walking out your front door for the first time and looking around your own neighborhood and seeing everything and seeing where it is and becoming spatially aware without having to rely on somebody's description of your neighborhood for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and that's a great way to describe it too. And it's such an intriguing thing because you started with, you were doing stuff on Instagram, and you still do that. You do an Instagram live, and you start there with an hour before you go onto Twitch. And you're one of the first people. There's a couple other ones on there. Don't get me wrong. Some really great people that have even been on your show a few times. But to really get behind utilizing these telescopes and getting people on there. And if I'm correct, I know of a few different people that use it, and all the people I think are actually using OPT scopes.
Yeah.
Like I go on watching streams, and there's, there it is. It's popped up in the corner again, and I see another one with OPT on it, and it's really a really cool thing. So, this is kind of a crazy time. Let's talk a little bit about how you said, hey, you know what? Here's the way that we can jump in and do something really cool. And so you've been using streaming to a really effective to an effective effect, I guess we would say.
Sure.
Really great job.
Right.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of affiliates. We have a pretty substantial affiliate network. And what it is we try to support the people who are supporting the community. I really do think that I've never seen a community like this one, and I'm sure it's your experience too, but there's so much cooperation instead of just competition in the science, or at least in the astronomy and astrophotography communities. And I love that because it's not necessarily like that in all of photography. I'm part of a lot of, I live for photography, man. I really do. And a lot of those communities, it's like, I don't want to give you my secrets. I don't want to tell you how I got this. In astrophotography, I think everybody is embracing that challenge together. And so they're just like, look, let me help you. We're going to come on here. I'm going to show you what I've learned, and then we can tackle these problems together. And it's just a really, really great thing. So we have this network of people doing exactly that. And we wanted to participate in a bigger way, but obviously time constraints. I mean, it's very challenging. It's very time consuming. I mean, how much time do you and I spend doing these types of things? It's a lot, and not to mention, running the company with Jenny and the team. So it's a lot that goes into it. So when marketing came to me and they're like, look, everybody's at home right now. If we're really going to give back to the community, we need to be available. People are not going to have options. Right now, they're going to be stuck at home with Netflix and not much else. And we need to serve our community by putting something out there that gives them a way to keep connecting space, even if they're trapped at home. And that's where our Twitch channel was born. We just thought, we have these observatories. Nobody has to leave their house for this. We can have a star party with no locality where the whole world is invited for free. And all you have to do is log in to come check it out. And we can bring in industry leaders. We've brought you, Fraser Kane, Astro Backyard. We're bringing everybody in. Last night, Dr. Pamela Gay was hanging out. And, we're just going to keep bringing in industry leaders and keep the conversation alive, whether it's about science or processing or watching the telescopes run, and we open those up for people to run. That one night you were there, we have someone in Pakistan running one of them and someone in Boston running another, and everybody's watching the images roll in live. It's like, it's tough to beat, man. It's so much fun. So you are muted right now. I'm not sure.
I totally am. It's that day, man. It's what it is, man.
It's the perfect. This is how all streams should go. There should always be these little hiccups. It makes it more fun.
This madness that happens, right? So, I absolutely 100% agree with you with all the amazing things that happen on there. And what's really been great is that I love the ability to hop on and see stuff. So I'm still new to astronomy. I'm still learning myself, and to be able to hop on there and take the very first image that I've ever shot before, and it's of the comet that we've all been listening and hearing about recently, and to be able to take that photo and then put it up and be like, hey man, here's a picture I took on my laptop, hours and hours away, from where these telescopes are set up in the middle of, where are they in there, in Joshua Tree, right?
Yeah, just outside of Joshua Tree, we have several in landers. Those are personal use. That was like the test bed for the whole project. But in the first ones we started building that are actually free for the public to use anytime are in Texas.
Okay, so I use that. I take this shot from, nowhere near me. I'm in Colorado. One's in, California. The other, they're the setup in, Texas and California, right? And so I take this picture, and now it's this running joke that I am Ron Comet.
Yeah.
This.
Yeah.
It's this really fun thing that becomes part of the community, and really connects people with it. And there's also, there's so much teaching. So we talked a little bit about telescopes. Now let's dive a little bit into astrophotography, which is something that you really put out on your personal platforms. And photos are always beautiful. I've definitely shared them more than a few times on my own. So can you tell us a little bit about astrophotography, like your passion for that, and also getting that out to the world?
Yeah, I think that you can get into astronomy from a lot of different angles, and I think it's irrelevant how you end up there. I think, but there are certain things that will keep you there. For some people, it's the science. I'd imagine that the science appeals to you, and it's fascinating. Every time you hear it, I can see you light up, man. And I love people like that. Like Tony Darnell's the same way. Fraser Kane. The science is, you can talk about it all day, every day, and it's going to keep you hooked no matter what. For me, it's the photography. So I'm a photographer at heart of all types, but I've found that the most challenging type of photography is astrophotography. I mean, you're taking exposures, looking for light where there is very little. And some of my photos are 90 hours of exposure time, and I really like the challenge. I love the reward of the perspective that astro photos will give you. Nothing else can. I mean, who else in the world is not only stopping time, going back in time, other than astrophotographers? Nobody, right? And so I think that for me, that's the hook, that's the passion. Is I'm not as hooked by the science. I mean, it's what my grad school time was. It's like, I've been there, I've enjoyed it, but it's not enough to keep me there. And I feel like a lot of people that get into it think, well, I'm obligated. If I'm not interested in the science, this isn't the hobby for me. I don't think that's really the case. I think the science is interesting, but it can just be because you like the art. It can just be because you like the colors, or you just like photography, pressing the shutter and watching the moon pop up. It doesn't matter. And for me, it's just the photography is what hooks me, the photography and the philosophy. And, I can tell you, Jenny is all the way on the extreme side of the art. She doesn't care how you get the data. She wants to process it and make it beautiful. And so I don't think it matters how you get here. I just think it matters what keeps you here.
That's an excellent point, and we're really fortunate to have conversations with a lot of people that are space artists. And it's a totally different animal when you see somebody like Catherine Machen, who's going to take what she sees in the universe and make these massive, gorgeous paintings that go out to some of the top people in the world. We know some people at some top names at SpaceX have some of her work among so many other people. And it's incredible to see those mixtures, and that's I kind of think where you kind of hit that middle ground. We have these folks that are doing astrophotography, but also painting, and you kind of see that mix in the middle of some of your shots look like somebody painted them. Like you might not know at first, like, no, that's an actual image from space that he spent 30 or 40 hours developing that image. And I think it's something that's really important to keep to like really highlight for people. And I know that it's kind of the same for you, that we continue to connect all these things together, and it doesn't matter, whether or not it came from the science or it came from the art.
Yeah, I really don't think it does. I think that astronomy is one of the very few things that transcends everything else on this planet, like everything. It's not just like, it's not generational. You go back when you're reading and you hear Shakespeare talking about the moon. He's talking about the same exact moon that you walk outside now and are fascinated with, the same exact one. It transcends all generations, so time, and then it's very few other things. Maybe like I always try to pick them apart, but I think it's like music, maybe humor, and maybe art are the only things that happen no matter which culture you go find around the entire planet. The only other thing is people walking outside being fascinated when looking up under a dark sky. That's it. And it's like, you don't have to be any certain type of person. I feel like it's innate in the human experience to already feel that way looking up at this. It's hard to fathom what it is that we're surrounded by.
Yeah, and these are really deep conversations that we've gotten into more than a few times. Especially, we get to the weekends, man. We get late night. The first couple hours, we're looking at imaging and stuff. And the more people that get in and start talking about these conversations, the more the more philosophical they get about our place in the universe. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. And it's something you put a lot of focus in and with your podcast. I mean, that's, you go into a podcast that, is generally, coming from a telescope company, and you're like, oh, we're probably going to talk about a lot about astronomy and telescopes. Our talk was all over the place. So tell us a little bit about, what the podcast is and why it might not be exactly what maybe people think it is. And I think that's a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, so Space Junk Podcast is sponsored by OPT. We put together with Tony Darnell from deepastronomy.space. He's one of the best science communicators in the world. The guy is incredible. I love that he can take any very complex scientific topic and break it down in a way that the people that have spent their lives studying the topic, astrophysicists, these other people, they are not offended by the simplicity because of the way he communicates. But people that have never heard of the topic before feel empowered to explore it. And that's a talent, that's a skill set that's developed over, decades. I feel like that is not an easy thing to do. And he does it so incredibly well. So what we wanted was to have two different sides talking about space. We wanted, he's worked at the Dark Energy Survey. He's done a lot in the professional sector. At OPT, I deal with, everything from the first $40 telescope you put on a tabletop all the way up to we serve NASA and JPL regularly on our professional services side, but it's all telescope and equipment related. And so we thought, why don't we just merge the two and let everything be open? We're going to bring space artists on. We're going to bring on controversial topics. We're going to talk about flat Earth. We're going to talk about astronomy versus astrology. We're going to talk about everything. And it's not going to be something that, like, the only rules are that it has to be a discussion, and we are open to anything and exploring it with the experiences and the knowledge that we've gained over time. And so it doesn't matter to us where the conversation goes. There's zero obligation to sell anything. You're never going to hear us like, hey, you should go buy this telescope right now in the middle. Like, it's not like that. It's just, hey, let's have a conversation about our passions, because passion is contagious and it's good for the entire community. And that is literally our job, is to serve this community. So it's a lot of fun, man. It's a blast. Been a bunch of crazy episodes.
Yeah, and it's fun to listen to, and you guys are great. And you mentioned, Tony's got such a great talent too. He's he's definitely got the radio voice, and this is coming from somebody that was a DJ for a very long time, right? So
he does, man.
Yeah, he's excellent at what he does. And, I love what you all do over there. And I love the fact that those conversations are open and available to people. And so, you were talking a little bit about just a moment ago about, there's not this hard sell on anything. And that's not really a whole lot of how you kind of do things. Like, even though you get on, you'll do these podcasts, and you'll not even necessarily the podcast, but the lives, whenever you sit and you talk about stuff, you're like, I want to show you guys all this crazy stuff. And one of the things that you don't do that a lot of people do, and I always laugh, and I'm always kind of picking on myself, is that, like, I say I need to learn French, because I watch these shows and they are in depth, and there's not a whole lot of people out there that are just, down in the dirt with this stuff, and you get really, really deep with it. And I think that you've developed a following because of that. So is it something important to you to to not treat the audience like they don't know what's going on, that you really feel that that's something that's really mattered in these shows?
Yeah, I think that, it's so with astrophotography, there's nothing that's in really, I think astronomy in general, the concepts are not that complicated. If we just stick to the conversation of astrophotography, what it is there's kind of this exclusivity that's perceived about it, because when you first start hearing people talk about it, it sounds like this mountain you have to climb of information to ever be successful in it. And it's just simply not true. What it is it's a different language. It's the language of photography and the language of astronomy combined, and you just have to be around the language for a little bit of time, and all of a sudden you don't even realize, just like any other language, you don't even realize you're picking the terminology up, you're picking up the words, and then you just all of a sudden speak the language, and we've developed that at OPT because we bring on new staff. We have a higher attitude and train policy at OPT, and I can tell you that, each of them, when we don't have coronavirus attacking the world, they have to come to what we call OPT University every day. And it's either myself or Ian or one of the other leadership team that comes in, and they get 45 minutes of training all day, every day. And they're not required to remember everything that they hear, but being around the language and hearing it spoken, I think in a matter of, in a single night, you will walk away realizing you know more about astronomy than you ever thought you would, just by picking it up, by being there and being part of it, And so I think that's how it works. It's just learning another language.
And I agree. The more that you're there, the more that you pick it up. And so, let's kind of take it back a few steps. And a question that we get so often, especially in the Mooncast that I've been a part of, the virtual star parties, is that there's always people asking the question of what telescope should I get? You guys are the biggest telescope distributor in the world. You're producing your own products now. You're doing a lot with it. Obviously, you get this question probably all the time. And so we touched on this just a little bit last week with Will Young, Deep Sky Dude. But let's get a different opinion for you. If somebody says, "Hey, what should my first telescope be?" How do you answer that question? And I know that we all do it just a little bit differently.
Yeah, I wish there were a simple answer, but the truth is there are a couple different hobbies within this hobby. And so you have visual astronomy that's going to it's going to push you towards one type of telescope. That's where you have all-TAS telescopes that move left, right, up, and down. It keeps the eyepiece in a more convenient position. And typically you can get a lot more for the buck for visual astronomy because you can get scopes like Dobsonians and things like that. So the answer to your question is I usually ask a few questions, and that's what the team does as well, is we try to figure out what are you trying to do. If you want to use this visually, it's going to lead you down one path. If you're wanting to do photography, it's another. And if you want a mix of both, it's another. So it really kind of depends. But I think you don't have to. You can go in at whatever level you want to. It's kind of like any hobby. I mean, look at people that get into cars. Sure, you can jump in at the top and go straight out and buy a Ferrari or McLaren or whatever you want to do. Or you can get in and pick up, a car for $1,500 and just start working on it and fixing it up to make it your dream car. You don't have to start at the very top. And a lot of people, we don't recommend that people do, I think you can get into this hobby with nothing more than the camera you already have and a tracking mount that just tracks at sidereal rate, the rate the Earth spins, and you can do long exposure photography and start shooting Milky Way. And that's like, you can get that for $200-$300. So it doesn't have to be this crazy expensive thing, and you just build on it from there.
I love it, man. And it's you're always full of great advice. And as you mentioned earlier, I think in one of these streams we started is that we passed by each other for so long, and it's been a really fun few weeks to where when we had never talked to each other about anything, and then within 2 days we did 4 live streams together. There was podcast, there was the Twitch, there was the Instagram live. You're doing so much out there, and so if people are kind of looking at what you're doing, they want to follow in your footsteps. You're doing so much right now. What is your advice to them? Of just say, hey man, maybe I want to get out there and I want to start communicating science a little bit more. Maybe they want to get in the telescope business. Maybe they want to come work for you someday. I do know that you said that, and this is a weird time to say this, but as soon as all this kind of passed over, you're ready to start hiring.
We are always looking for help. Yeah, we are always looking for help. So OPT is a growing company and has grown more in the last 3 years than ever. So we absolutely have had conversation all the time. And if somebody has an interest, and I just got one of these emails earlier today, actually, you have an interest, and it's one of those things where you can tell this is where you belong is in this industry, even if it's not something that OPT has a spot for right then and there. We know most of the people in the industry, and a lot of times, we'll try to steer people where they do need to be. If there's any way that we can help, we want to. And I think the answer is, how do I get into it? Exactly what you did, Ron. Like, you're here because you watched Cosmos and you found this passion and it clicked and you went all in. I think that's the answer. If this is your passion, you have to embrace that, and don't let. You're either going to make the decision based on that passion and that drive, or you're going to make it based on the fear. And I think the people that go all in on it, man, they end up doing exactly what you do, where, in no time at all, you're interviewing Neil deGrasse Tyson, and you're creating something with gravity. And I think that's why it pulls in the other big projects like the ones we're doing. That's why I said, I think that both of these projects had gravity, and now they're just kind of, it's not by chance that we're doing so much together, because we have the same mission.
And so, we're going to wrap it up. We got one more very important question, and this is going to be a big one because you are everywhere. So tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find you first, then where they can find OPT, and then where they can find the Space Junk podcast, which all of those are like, you have almost as many social media profiles to keep up with as I do.
Yeah, it's quite a bit going on. I have a really great team that helps me with everything. So for my personal work on Facebook, I'm easy to find, just Dustin Gibson. On Instagram, it's Gibson Pics. Most of the things I post are to Instagram. So if you want to see things as they come out, Gibson Pics, GIBSONPICS. And that's the same thing on Twitch. So if you go to Twitch, I use the same Instagram handle just to make it easy to find. And that's where we do the virtual star parties and all of the talks. We're actually going to be doing a live stream here in just a couple of hours of a podcast that we're recording today, Planewave. And so going to twitch.tv/Gibson Pics, you'll have access to all of that stuff. All of this stuff is free. I give my images away. So if there's something you see you like there, just shoot me a message. And I live stream on Instagram every single day at 3 p.m. Pacific. On the other channels, so for instance, like OPT's account, you can go to OPT Telescopes on Facebook. You'll see everything that we're posting there. It's very active. OPT Corp on Instagram, and that's where you'll see a lot of our affiliate work. So if you want to become an affiliate, you want to be part of the mission, making the universe accessible to everyone, then jump on that account, shoot us a message, and let us know, and we can get you all set up to help drive things forward. And then Space Junk Podcast has its own Instagram, same thing on Facebook, and you can see the episodes live now, starting today, actually, on Twitch at the Gibson Pics page. But if you want to just listen to the podcast, anywhere that podcasts are available, it's there. So iTunes, Spotify, Anchor FM, wherever you hear other podcasts, if you type in Space Junk Podcast, it's going to be there, and you can check it out. And check out the episode we did with Ron. It was a fun one.
Man, indeed it was, and it's always a blast talking with you. And I know that we're going to do much more of that in coming days and months and years ahead. And it's been been such an exciting time talking with you today. We've jumped through a lot of hoops, man. We got it done, and it was an incredible conversation as always. So Dustin, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. This is fun.
And that's going to conclude this episode of the live edition of Space Foundation's Space4U podcast. Keep your eyes and ears open for more Space4U episodes by checking out our social media outlets on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and of course our website at www.spacefoundation.org. And don't forget to also visit www.discoverspace.org for more digital content for teachers, parents, and students. You can support the Space Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit, by visiting www.spacefoundation.org/donate. And on all these outlets and more, it's our goal to inspire, educate, connect, and advocate for the space community, because at the Space Foundation, we will always have space for you. Thank you, everybody, for joining today.